Hey everyone, it's David Ault. Can I ask a favor? Will you just take a breath with me? Wherever you are, whatever time it is that you are watching this, just take a breath. We're all aware that there is so much going on, and sometimes we overlook or devalue the benefit of that breath. And if you would, let me tell you a story, and then we're going to see how this little story can be applicable and helpful for you. So stay with me here for this edition of The Gathering. So the story is told by one of my favorite writers. His name is Jedediah Jenkins. Highly recommend him. Beautiful writer. He was talking about when he was a young man in his 30s, he worked for a nonprofit in San Diego. They were doing some projects with an organization in Uganda, and they were going to bring a bunch of Ugandan young people to America for this particular project. And they knew that Uganda was a landlocked country. They're coming to San Diego. So they wanted to be mindful and give them a lot of quality time to experience the ocean. I thought that was really incredible. I loved that. And so the time came, the contingency of Ugandan young people are here, but they also came with some chaperones. And one was a 72-year-old Ugandan man named Norman. And here they go to the ocean. And Jedediah wrote that he watched Norman, who began to become very emotional and transfixed as he looked at the potency and the power of the ocean. And Norman said, truly, this is a miracle. And just standing there watching it. And Jedediah wrote that Norman had never witnessed this. He had only read about it. He had only maybe seen it on a television or in a movie, but to see it live, truly, this is a miracle. And he, in that transfixed state, walked fully clothed into the waves and let the ocean just engulf him. Jedediah was so moved, and he said, it reminded me of one of his favorite feelings, and that is something that he termed secondary rediscovery. Secondary rediscovery. Jedediah had seen the ocean thousands of times, perhaps. He lived by the ocean. But because of Norman, he was seeing the ocean again, rediscovering the ocean as if he was witnessing it for the first time. That is such a critical and invaluable piece of this thing called awe and wonder. Do you remember how the poet Rumi said, if you and I are not in awe, we're not paying attention? And when I first read the story, I remember thinking sort of linearly in this kind of chain of thought, what a wonderful thing that this nonprofit did. And then the more I thought about it, I flipped it and I realized what a wonderful thing Norman did for Jedediah and the people of this nonprofit. Do you see what just happened there? Sometimes we, in our efforts to offer good to the world, there is a little kind of ceremonial patting on the back that we are the ones doing the helping. And we are on one perception, one plane of form as we look at it. But on another plane, on another viewpoint, this kind of act is being done for us. And so the more that I reflected on flipping the script, the more I saw the sainthood of Norman and how you and I have the possibility to reacquaint ourselves with all of the Normans that are walking around in our world. And who could not benefit from some good old-fashioned secondary rediscovery? A little bit of reconnecting to the everyday sense of awe and wonder in our world. And where do you and I need it the most? Great question. I cannot help but think about the four primal needs. There isn't any person that I don't work with who isn't being affected by one of the four primal needs. And when I say affected, they're looking for some relief. They're looking for a way out. They feel trapped. They are suffocating. They are anxious. They are fearful about something that's going on in one of these four primal needs. And so that's either health or career or finances or relationships. And when you break each of those four needs down, health, because we've seen what declining health looks like, because we've seen what physical suffering looks like, we have this anticipatory fear inside of us that wants to do everything possible to avoid that. And so rather than being in the moment with this instrument that we have and being in awe and wonder of all of the things that are working, much of our mental atmosphere is focused on this gloom and doom futurizing and prevention. And so we're never fully present. And this thing called health creates this anxiousness inside of us that consumes our actions. With career, everybody has this creative impulse inside of them. Everybody. We all have this thing that is a unique expression of our individualization, our gift to the world. And yet again, because of our exposure to and our entrapment in something called comparison, we often second guess our own creativity. And we create these impossible standards by which we think our creativity has to measure up. And so that, again, brews a storm of discontent and fear inside of us to where we're always in like hustle mode, trying to do things to beat someone or to get ahead. And that wears us down and we're not in the moment. Finances, this primal thing about security. What's going to happen to me? Who's going to take care of me? There's not enough. Again, this sort of domestication and generational grooming that tells us that if we're not careful, someone else is going to come and take everything away from us. And then relationships. What's going to happen to me? Who's going to love me? That innate need to want to connect to people, to others, to experience intimacy. Everybody has that need to be seen, to be valued, and to be loved. So primal needs. And rather than resting in an assurance that each of these primal needs will be met, and they will be met in the moment as we become more and more relaxed into allowing a sense of awe and wonder to handhold us and guide us in this human existence. We try to override awe and wonder and create a false sense of security. We use this thing called will and willpower to think, to fool us, to trap us in believing that somehow if we work hard enough, we can outrun an inevitability of change. So, how do we pause? How do we look at our four primal needs? I'll tell you what, pick one of those four primal needs right now And I know this is going to sound a little counterintuitive, but I want you to think about where you are feeling the most anxious in this moment. Where are you feeling the most, separated? And let's breathe into that one for a moment. And instead of trying to outrun it or outmaneuver it, I want you to turn to the fear or turn to the thought that feels fearful. Turn to the question that you are longing and craving an answer to. And I want you to imagine that Norman is standing with you. And you are looking at this particular thing. And I want you to hear Norman's voice say, truly, this is a miracle. And see if you can begin to dismantle this thing, this primal need, and look beyond all of the scenarios that you've created in your mind and allow yourself to be comforted by what rests beyond what your mind has done to you. In other words, don't let a cloudy sky be your permanent sky. Understand that even in the midst of the five senses, that there is an intricate divine design, a masterful design of beauty, of harmony, of perfection, that just waits for you to see it through the new lens of secondary rediscovery. And if you are willing to play that, to let Norman kind of walk with you through your day, through this experience, through this one thing that you're focusing on, and now breathe and spend time with that. Did you hear what I said? Breathe and spend time with that. There is a softening. There is a relaxation in the moment where you and I can finally tune into a still small voice, a divine idea, an energetic guidance, something that has always been there, but you and I can't see it, feel it, interact with it, or even acknowledge its presence because we're too busy wrapped up in engaging in these four primal needs the way in which the rest of the noise in the world is engaged. Do you understand what I mean? To pause and to breathe. Go with Norman. Norman, who has this beautiful sense of awe and wonder and willingness. And see if you can look at that primal need, at that fear, and allow yourself to rediscover that that very thing is beckoning you to a greater experience, to a greater growth spurt, to a prompt that wants to excel and expand you so that you don't have to continue to be trapped in this mundane, muddied viewpoint of the world. Can you see the world again? Can you rediscover a world that does actually work for you instead of against you? You won't know if that's possible if you don't go with Norman to the ocean's edge and be willing to see it again. Otherwise, what we do is we just sit and we convene with other people who are also trapped in non-solution, trapped in the tribal nature of complaint. And that's really easy. But what I want you to do is to allow yourself to meet Norman and to walk to the shore of a new experience, to have a secondary rediscovery about something in your life, so that that thing that is permanent, the permanence of awe and wonder, can finally be experienced by you. It is possible. It is possible. So go, spend a day, spend an hour, hopefully a day, hopefully a week with Norman and see what happens with that particular intention and availability by you this week. And so it is.